And
you're welcome and deserving. Have a wonderful show.
Thanks. Welcome, everybody, to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. And today is Wednesday. It's December 13th, 2023. And our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we would love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. And we'll give Michael a moment to dial in. I'll just say, we had talked yesterday about the documentary, or the TV series, rather, on the, what was it? The Queen, my mind's gone. I can't think of the name of it. I think The Crown. Okay. And we were going to watch the episode that we were talking about yesterday. We were going to watch it last night, but the only place you can get it, unless you want to buy it, is Netflix, and we no longer have Netflix. So we couldn't watch it. So anyway, our discussion on that won't take place today. Anyway, Michael, my mind is going in about 100 directions. Michael's going to announce something about a series that we're going to start in January on the Enlightenment, and I'm going to, hold on a second. So he's going to tell you about that while I'm trying to figure out what this is going to cost us on this end, and then he'll be able to give you final information. So he should be on with us here in just 1 second. It's something that he plans on starting in January. And so we're going to give everybody, that'll give everybody 2 or 3 weeks, because we're going to wait until about mid-January to order the Enlightenment book. So when he gets on here, then I'm going to get off and go check on the mailing and everything and see what this would run, and then he's going to give you specifics. If you've got the Enlightenment, then you're a step ahead, and you ask what the Enlightenment is. If you go to our website, whyagain.org, up in the top, you'll see one of the menu items is the Khabouris. Khabouris, you can go down and it says Enlightenment, and it is what has been translated so far out of the Khabouris Manuscript. And so Michael can talk more about that, and but that way you can get a kind of a heads up of what it's about and everything. And like I said, if you've already got one, then you're ahead of the game. So Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll figure out what the shipping on this is, and then I'll get back to you before you finish talking.
Okay, sweetie. Thank you. So welcome, everybody. Delighted and excited that we get to do this again, and we're going to open a new phase. I had mentioned the idea of perhaps covering the Khabouris, or the Enlightenment book, which is what we've published so far from the Khabouris Manuscript, the Aramaic work we've been working from all these years. And I'm looking at how we can proceed with that. It's going to be interesting. And it won't just be the translation work, but we'll do some work with the history. I have a few fun stories to tell about Dan McDougald and the Social Service Agency in Albany, Georgia, where we worked with the manuscript. Probably a couple of stories out of the prison in Atlanta, out of the jail system down there. We'll all the years of Dan coming to Heartland each summer for, I don't know, 15, 16 years. Dan came to Heartland, and we co-taught Laws of Living. And then once or twice a year, I would go down to Albany, Georgia, and co-teach Laws of Living. And the Laws of Living comes straight out of the Aramaic. The way that the Laws of Living came to be is that Dan had created a course for the prisons from the Aramaic called Emotional Maturity Instruction, EMI. And then when Dan and I connected, and my background being in naturopathy, we combined the medical aspect of the work that I'd been doing, and I had been teaching courses under the name Lessons in Living, actually back, I remember how many years ago, in Delray Beach, Florida. I started a program, well, I can tell you how many years ago. My son was about 5, and he's 44 now, so 39 years ago. And we had looked at schools for my children. Didn't really find anything very satisfactory. And tried a couple of them for a very short period of time. It just wasn't workable, so we started a parent school. But at the same time, I was teaching at Unity of Delray, and they had a kindergarten to 8th grade class. And we started a course called Lessons in Living for kids from kindergarten to grade 8. And it was shortly after that that Dan happened to come to Fort Lauderdale. He had a brother down there, and I actually don't remember exactly how we connected, but somehow we connected. I can remember sitting in a restaurant in Fort Lauderdale just having this. I'd start a sentence and Dan would finish it, and he'd take it in the direction of the Aramaic, and I'd take it in the direction of the naturopathic medicine and the work that I'd been developing to that point, nutrition and all of that. And so we ended up creating the laws of living when we put the two courses together, and that all flowed primarily from the Khabouris Manuscript, which what we've published so far from that manuscript is in a book called Enlightenment. So on January 15th, we're going to start to do the Enlightenment project. The book normally sells for $25 plus shipping, and that's what Jeanie's just checking on. I think the shipping normally comes out around $7 or $8. So what we're going to do as a special related to those who want to get the book for being part of the radio show is we're going to do free shipping on it. So we'll absorb the shipping costs, and it'll be just a straight up $25 for the book, and you'll be able to mark up. The book consists of 3 sections. There's an introductory section that talks about the manuscript, how it came together, and then there's a section, the middle section is some select passages from the New Testament. And what the foundation selected to do was to leave the key words that were in Aramaic in brackets and do a translation of some select passages from the New Testament. The Khabouris is a copy of the full Eastern canon of the New Testament in Aramaic. And then the last section of the book, the 3rd section, is a 1st century Aramaic dictionary. There were about 20 translators who worked on, some of the world's top Aramicists worked on doing that translation work, and the particular focus was to do the best they could do, being out here in the 1900s, to do the best they could do to establish the 1st century meanings of Yeshua's words as they fell from his lips. So that was the focus of 20 of the world's top Aramicists. Several of those folks were Native American speakers, and others were just biblical scholars who had worked with the Aramaic. And, you'll get a strong comeback from most of the Greek-oriented folks who will tell you that work was all done in Greek, and Yeshua, if he sat and listened to what those folks are saying, he'd say that's all Greek to me, because none of it was done in Greek. None of it, not a thing. The language, the syntax, the focus, the meanings of the idioms were all Aramaic, and you just can't translate an idiom. You can't do it. You probably heard me share before the story about, we have a fellow coming from Russia. Make a long story short, you speak Russian, you house him, you bring him to the workshop, you translate for him. We have dinner a couple of times over the month that he's here, and we have a great time, and at the end of the week, I want this fellow who, I don't speak any Russian, he doesn't speak any English, I want him to know how great I think he is. And so I say, would you please tell our new friend that I think he's really cool? And you turn to our new friend and you say, Michael thinks you've got a low body temperature. You translate my words perfectly, but you didn't say a word about what I meant. And so much of what we hear in churchianity today has nothing whatsoever to do with Yeshua's words. They're stuffed in his mouth by the Greeks, but it just isn't. It just is senseless. It just doesn't, Anyway, we're going to get into that and look at those first century meanings and see how it unfolds. I suspect we'll probably tie in some of the laws of living material that was developed out of that study and that work with the Khabouris. So we'll start that on January 15th, and we've been trying to figure out, because our catalog, if you go in order from the catalog, it automatically attaches shipping, and then we have to pay that, or a percentage of that, however it comes in. So what we're going to do is, if you go to our website, go to whyagain.org. At the bottom of the page, there's a donate button. And if you just click that, it goes through PayPal. If you have a PayPal account, you can just do it straight through PayPal. And if we're friends of yours or family, we'll ask if you would, when you do that donation, is click the button that says Friends and Family. And that means we won't have to pay them from what you send us for the manuscript. And so if you just mark your donation Enlightenment and put your address in, your name and address, then that will give us the information we need in order to ship the book to you.
And I will put a link in the notes for today directly to the, like if you click on donate, if you don't have PayPal, you click on the donate, and then when you put in the $25, the next page will give you the option. I'm doing it as I'm talking, so hold on, my computer's slow.
Right.
It gives you the option. It says this organization needs your address for their records. And so you put in the mailing address where you want it sent, and then click donate. However, like Michael's, and it gives you the option, you can either use PayPal or you can use, a credit card or a bank account or whatever. But if you do have a PayPal account, don't go through the website, because even the donate on the website, PayPal gets part of it. But if you have a PayPal account, you can just sign into your account and click that you want to donate to Heartland Aramaic Mission. I'll put that information in the notes for today as well. So several ways that you can pay it there, either with your credit card or your bank account or however you have it set up. And be sure that we have the mailing address.
So we're going to get it done as economically as we can in terms of picking up the shipping. So if you would do that and you want to join us for it, that would be awesome. And in the meantime, of course, this conversation has been going on now on this radio show. We'll be heading in January into our 13th year, which is pretty amazing. I think back to the first, we were in Fort Lauderdale, actually, when we met a young lady who had a blog talk show, and we started to do a radio show through her connection with Blog Talk, and then we did that for 3 years, I guess, and then we got our own account with Blog Talk, and so we've been doing an hour to 2 hours a day, 5 days a week for 12 years now. So all of those archives are available to you. All you do is go to our website, whyagain.org, and in the middle of the page, you'll see a picture of a microphone. And if you click that microphone, you can just drill down from there. There are links, and you can go in and you can get the archives of today's show or any one of the last, it's got to be getting close to 5,000 now. And if you want to do it through, if you've got a podcast system that you use, you can get it through your podcast system, Mindshifters Radio. And some podcast systems only allow 300 shows, and we've got, as I say, probably close to 5,000 now. So if you want to get them all, one place I know you can, I'm sure there are more, I'm just not familiar with them, but if you want to be able to look back through all of the podcasts that we've done over the years, just download iHeartRadio and go into podcasts there. And they're one that I know show everything that's in the archives. Some of them only show up to 300, which is just a minuscule amount of what we've got. And if you choose to listen to any of our old shows, and the information is always relative, there are notes, and you can see what that show is about in probably now, Jeanie, most of the shows. There are notes.
Yeah, except for the earlier shows. I wasn't taking notes at the very beginning, yeah.
Right. So there are notes and links to everything that's talked about in most of them. And if you happen to go back and see a title that you're interested, or, well, actually, I don't think they're even titles either, sweetie. Earlier shows. So if you go back and listen to an earlier show, we would really appreciate your support in making a note of what the date is on the show, and just doing a brief, outline of what it was. Was this about, healing through relationships? Did we talk about communication? So if you just do some, it doesn't have to be anything detailed or as detailed as you want to make it, but if you take some notes on what was in that particular show, then we'll add them to the show, send them to us, and email them to Jeanie, Jeanie at whyagain.org. So Jeanie at whyagain.org. So if you email that to Jeanie, then that will help us, because it'll put it on the notes, and then it'll make the searchability of topics more complete. So, hoping to make it easier to find and easier to work with as we work toward, in one of the shows that we did back just a few weeks ago now was a show entitled Aramaicisms. If you're interested in getting into what we're going to do with the Khabouris, you can go back to the archives and listen to that 4-hour Aramaicisms, and I'm sure that probably within the next year we'll probably play that whole 4-hour series again. Up until we put it on that show, it was only available as a paid download. It was in our catalog, and so it's now part of the, it's out there, so you can just, without having to go and pay for it in our catalog. And if you want to support us, we'd be delighted if you would pay for it in the catalog, but we're working to make everything we can as freely available as possible, and just invite you, if you're in a position and you've got the money to do it, to do something in the way of support, so that those who don't have it, so that we're empowered to be able to make it more and more and more available. You'll notice that we don't have any commercials on this show, and we don't monetize it in any way, shape, or form. We actually pay to do the show. And it's just part of our effort to make the teachings of Yeshua a la first century Aramaic universally available. Now, if you go to our website, we've got about 20,000 pages or more there by now. And it's all about how do we make everything we know about this available to everyone as freely as we can. Yes, there are some paid options, but as freely as possible, how can we make it available so that everyone has access to it regardless of financial circumstances or level of willingness to pay? And so there are options. If you want to support us, there's a catalog. There's a donate button. If you're benefiting from the work, we invite you to consider that. You can go to our YouTube channel. There are dozens of videos on our YouTube channel. Just search Michael, Michael, Ryce, on your YouTube link, and you'll find dozens of our videos there. What's that, Jeanie?
Well, two things. One, I was just going to say, we're coming up the end of the year, and a lot of people use charitable donations for their tax deduction. The book would not be, because you're actually getting something for that donation. We're just doing it that way so that you don't have to pay shipping. But, you can also make a donation to this work and, let me know, because some people donate and they don't necessarily need a receipt, so I don't automatically send them all out. But if you do make a donation and you need a tax receipt, please email me at Jeanie, Jeanie @whyagain.org, and let me know that you need one and your current address, and I will get that out to you. I got a text just now that says, how long do you think it would be before the book is sent out if I send the PayPal payment today? Just thinking about where I'll be during the holidays so I can have it shipped to a different address.
We'll get it out
we've already
well.
We've already missed the mail for today. They've already run, so I would get it packaged up today and get it in the mail tomorrow. And the person that wrote that's in no, you're not in California. But if you are all the way out into California, it still shouldn't take but maybe 3 or 4 days, even including all the Christmas rush and everything.
Probably, no, I'd count on more like, with Christmas and all, I'd count on more like 7 or 8 days going to California.
Okay.
That'd be my thought.
So if you're closer to us than that, you'd get it sooner. But I would think that within the week anyway. So today is the 13th. So if you're thinking you're going to be gone for the holidays, you should get it by the 21st or close to. So if you're going to be gone that weekend, you might want to have it sent. Just let us know.
Yeah.
And it ships media mail, which is a little bit slower than first class. So.
Right. And knowing how the Postal Service has been degraded over, the last couple of years, it's actually gotten a little better, but back 3 years plus ago, we had stuff that was taking weeks that normally would take, they went in and they destroyed some of the new equipment that had been purchased in order to expedite mail. I mean, it was just an atrocity what happened in the post office. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6, 7. It was just, a man was appointed who had his own shipping business that coordinated with the post office, and so he literally went in and just destroyed post office equipment, just purposely slow it down, and it appears to increase his business. It's just bizarre, but so things are somewhat slower than they have been in the past, and so just be aware of that. But that's another whole story. So that's our next project, and I'm looking forward to how that's going to unfold, getting more of the focus on the Aramaic. It'll be interesting to see what develops out of the conversation. It'll be fun to move it forward.
If you just for information, if you do order it from the cart or from the shopping section, it will add $9 to ship it.
You cut out there, Jeanie. If you do order from the shopping cart,
then it's $9 that it will charge you for the shipping. So by making it as a donation, you save $9.
Yeah. So again, if you just go in to the donate button, put in the word Enlightenment, your name and address, and the $25 donation, and that $9 will not be charged. If you put it in as an order, then the system automatically, calculates what it's going to cost, and it's $9 to ship it. So we'll absorb that and get it as quickly as we can. So, Ms. Jeanie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
No, it's all quiet. No hands are up. So if you have a question or a comment or there's something we can support you with, press 1, and you're first in line with no waiting. We have 37 minutes.
And with no hands up, the direction I'd like to go is to look at the idea that each of us came into the world where there was a culture and a direction that the culture was going. and one of the objectives of this work is to assist people in looking at life instead of through the lens of your perceptual constructs and all the categories of human drama and trauma and such, to move more and more to looking at life as an energetic dynamic, realizing that we are energetic beings. We're not physical beings. If we listen to Einstein, he says, on such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy, energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. We don't live in a material world. One of the basic principles of this energetic world of energy is a thing called inertia. And inertia basically says that a body at rest will continue to be at rest until something knocks it out of that state of rest, or a body moving in a particular direction at a particular rate of speed will continue to move in that direction at that rate of speed unless it's acted upon by an outside force. So we've all been brought into this river of life, and we have our culture. We have our family culture. We have our country's culture. We have our language cultures, different parts of the country. I know I can remember the first time that I went to the farmer's market in Atlanta, Georgia. And it took me several tries before I understood what this little guy, who was probably about 7, was trying to say to me. And his father was a farmer who grew tomatoes. And I couldn't possibly repeat the way that he said it, but basically it was something along the lines of, "Hey, you want some maters, mister?" And so, we have our cultures that have a direction that they lead us emotionally, mentally, physically, intellectually. And then we have this multi-quadrillion, multi-generational database called the body-mind unit. I was actually invited, some of you have been in intensives with or heard our friend Dr. John Lawrence from Sarasota, Florida, who's got a rather unique healing practice as a chiropractor and chiropractic neurologist. And I was listening to one of his, he had a conference this past weekend. Some really interesting speakers. In fact, I'm going to talk to John and see if maybe we can bring some of his material in from that conference. But as I listened to several hours of speakers, there were all kinds of technologies, working with physical stuff, working with drugs, only drugs that, they're classified as drugs, but are more things that are more natural to the body. And in all of it, nobody had anything to say about the fact that we come into, at the beginning of our lives, this multi-quadrillion, multi-generational database that has its own inertia, its own set. And impacts, influences, and filters everything that we experience. And I haven't had the conversation with John yet, but I plan to. It's like, why didn't anybody say a word about how you remove content from that database that perhaps is creating problems in your life? Nobody used the word forgiveness in the whole conference. Now, to be generous about that, I didn't get to listen to every hour of the conference, so somebody might have thrown it in there, but it was just like, for me, it was so glaringly missing. And, John's done this work over the last 30 or more years, been really impacted by it. But to recognize that there is an energetic thrust from your family culture, your generational patterns. And the core tool for changing that energetic thrust is Yeshua's first century Aramaic tool of forgiveness. Is a way that you can, when you realize, and I don't know how to come up with a number big enough, multi-quadrillion. Like, how many is that? How much data is there in your genes, in your cells, that when resonated into activity give meaning to the things you're experiencing? And are those meanings all based in your human life, love, or are some of those meanings based in something other than love? And if they are, what do you do about it? I'd invite everybody to consider that everything your mind has ever shown you or informed you about that's been based in hostility or fear is a lie. One of the things that sort of brought this into awareness for me, I listened to a lot of different things. And I recently listened to a man who's, from what I gather, a very well-respected intellectual atheist, a fellow named Dawkins. And I read through some of the comments on his video. It was like a 2-hour video. And the brutal sarcasm this man used throughout in order to diss people who don't believe as he does. And he's apparently an extremely well-respected intellectual, according to some of the comments. You know, people are like, oh, yeah, this guy's impacted my life. It's like, but ignorance of the simple work that Yeshua brought forward that says, there's a place in your mind that if you set it properly, your whole reality structure will be informed by love, as he sarcastically, aimed his shots at quote-unquote Christians or Muslims or Jews. He was an equal degrader of any religion going. And yet, some of the most basic work of Yeshua that said, if your mind is informed by hostility or fear, you're dead. You're destroying yourself. And this guy even, made comments about how he liked his sarcastic nature. It's like, sir, you're as dumb as a board when it comes to understanding how your own mind works. And you're out there impacting people by the thousands with this hostile, sarcastic expression that you're so proud of. I doubt he even knows, the way he bragged about sarcasm is that the root of the word sarcasm means to tear flesh. And that sarcasm is our culture's socially acceptable way of expressing otherwise unacceptable rage. And rage is one of the greatest destroyers of accurate perception that there is in the world. This man that he was dissing so deeply, this man Yeshua from 2,000 years ago, would have sat down and explained to him, sir, you need to understand how your own mind works. Because in all of your getting, you haven't got the fact that you're a human being yet. And you think sarcasm is a fun and reasonable way to interact with other human beings. And you don't even know that there's a filter in your own mind that's destroying your perception. And it's this multi-generational database that until we clean it up, corrupt data shows up through the hostility and fear filters within your mind. And when hostility or fear are in control of perception, your mind is using its worst corrupt data to literally, let me back up, rather than to literally, what the mind does is it converts the digital information of our thoughts into pictures. And if the digital information of our thoughts is based in hostility or fear, then that digital information is corrupt information. Corrupt meaning that when you use it, there's no way to see or comprehend the truth. The actual facts of what's going on in the world. It's just not possible. And that there is a technology, and it's, for me, to a certain degree, it's sad that this technology has been brought into our Western awareness as though it's about theology, when it's not. That's one of the greatest disservices that the Greeks have done to the teachings of Yeshua. They turned them into a theology, when the truth of it is, it's about physiology, it's about physics, it's about genetics, it's about psychology. But it's been distorted, and sadly, in so many cases, distorted by those whose minds are totally blown out by their own hostility and fear. And so you look at how many places we have this terrorist called God that's out to get us. And what we have are minds who take the teachings of the man Yeshua and refuse to use the tools, or don't know the tools are even there, with which to correct their own faulty perceptions. And they promote this theology, supposed theology, that, well, you're nothing but a useless sinner, worthless sinner, and you can't do anything on your own. There's nothing you can do, and doing something won't help anyway, because there's only one way, and that's through faith. Now, if you go back and listen to man Yeshua, when they tell those guys who want to pretend that that's the end of the story, he tells them there's a work to be done. They say to him, too hard a saying, and they leave. No, too hard. You mean I have to face my rage, my guilt, my grief, my hatred, the generational thrust of the vengeance and the brutality that's shown up in my family system through abusive, drunken fathers, abusive, drunken mothers, drug-addicted, drug-addled children? Did I have to live with that? And there's nothing I can do about it? And my offering is today, psychology doesn't even scratch the surface. You know, all the great psychiatrists, all the great psychologists out there, doesn't even scratch the surface of the basic principles that this man presented that are just the root of understanding and the root of healing. And sadly, it was turned into a theology. And the tools, the how-to, have been covered up with this story about, well, there's nothing you can do anyway. And the tools have basically just been tossed away, just dropped out and disappeared, as though they were never there, as though there were never tools delivered. And yet, in that ancient Aramaic language, there were some of the most profound tools for psychological healing that have ever come to the earth. And guess what? You can't hear a word of that in Greek. It's just like there's just no way to deliver it. It's like, like I spoke of this Russian gentleman. You turn to him in your best Russian and say, Michael thinks you've got a low body temperature. But Michael said, you're really cool. And the Aramaic language is just rife with idioms. It's loaded from start to finish with idioms. And as I say, I don't care how great a language translator you are. I don't care how well versed you are in how many different languages. If you don't know that that word cool is an idiom, you'll translate it as something to do with temperature. When the fact is, when I say he's really cool, it's something to do with how great I think he is, how wonderful I think he is, how much fun I think he is, how up-to-date, suave. If you don't know the word cool as an idiom, you're going to try to translate it literally, and there's just idea after idea after idea after idea that's just totally shattered from the Aramaic because these people that were translating it didn't have a clue about the idioms. So I hope that gives you some fodder to think about. And we will be working with those Aramaic ideas starting on the 15th of January, and at least the Aramaic ideas a la the Khabouris Manuscript and the Enlightenment book. Enlightenment is the title of the book that we've published, which contains all the material so far published from the Khabouris Manuscript. It's found back in the early 60s on the Khabouris River in Turkey. That's why it's called the Khabouris Manuscript. And it's been carbon dated twice at the University of Arizona. They're kind of a premier carbon dating facility. And both times it came out about plus or minus at 1000 AD, plus or minus 50 years, which makes it the oldest known copy of the Aramaic New Testament. And what the imprimatur on the manuscript says is that it is a copy of a text from approximately 165 AD. So that's what we'll be working with. And if that opens any thoughts or questions, we've got about 20 minutes left for conversation. So if you're out there in listener land and you have any thoughts to express, questions, then it'd be awesome if you pushed 1 and we had a conversation. Our call-in number, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, is 563-999-3581. 563-999-3581. You call that number, you'll
got
be
a hand
listening to
up.
the show directly. Oh, great. Let's say hello.
I believe it's Dusty. It's area code 904. You're on the air.
Well, aloha, one and all.
Aloha. ¿Cómo estás?
Yes. Well, I very much enjoyed what you were talking about, and that whole thing about rage that you brought up. I saw rage, overwhelming rage, for over 10 years, and it is kind of what you said, one of the, it seemed to be the strongest masking agent over any kind of loving reality that I've ever seen. It's just out of rage. And really hit a spot on that one. That was good stuff.
Mm.
And but I wanted to tell you in brief, because I'm kind of juggling two things right now, but I have been studying the Khabouris Manuscript, and I thank you for that. And wow, what an interesting read that is. And for those that might not know, Khabouris Manuscript is a place where some of this Aramaic comes from, I guess, that you expound.
Right.
And,
the Enlightenment book that you've got is what we published so far from the Khabouris.
Gotcha. Okay. And I thought it was very interesting. The whole first third of that manuscript was pretty much a academic documentation, which I thought was very good, and a rather engaging story about how the gentleman went to this obscure place at the headwaters of the Euphrates back in the 60s, a couple different trips, and found this manuscript and got it out of there just before it was taken over by whatever government was in power that didn't want anything like that to exist. Thank God that it got back. And
yes,
that thing, and one thing that really struck me strong in there, Michael, was that there was a judge, I don't know, it's Kelly or something like that.
Judge Asa D. Kelly.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I figured you would know that. And in the Georgia...
Yeah, he was a mentor of mine.
Oh, okay. Well, you could have done worse, by golly. Oh, my goodness. What a guy. In fact, in brief, the story was that he had this kind of information introduced into some hardcore prison system in Georgia, which I can relate to, but that's another story. But at any rate, he brought it into the prison, and the recidivism back then was, 96% or something. It was really
horrendous.
High.
Yeah.
And after they did this, now this is just what's written down. I mean, who knows if this? I mean, So, but the recidivism after this was introduced to willing participants who could grasp it and own it was only 3%.
Yeah.
Which is stunningly phenomenal. I mean,
and many of them became teachers of the work.
Well, I believe that. I could see that. I mean, yeah, it works for me. It worked for my brothers, kind of thing. And but that's just a stunning difference. I was expecting maybe 25% drop or something like that. But no, this is practically all of it. And then the fact, the integrity of this Dr. Kelly, Judge Kelly, that for whatever reason, it was pulled from the curriculum in these prisons, and some would say that, there's too much money to be made in prisons, and so we can't be having this. But whatever the reason, Judge Kelly went and resigned because of it. And I went, wow, now there's some integrity and there's some dedication. And that's a beautiful story.
Yeah, at one point, Judge Kelly was actually the head of the prison department in the state of Georgia. And then he became a Superior Court judge in Albany, Georgia, and that's where we had and we worked hand in hand with Judge Kelly with the Judicial Service Agency, where we did pretrial release programs with prisoners. And it was actually the local sheriff, ultimately, that got it out of the local prison, because basically the sheriff got paid by how many beds he had filled every night. And he wasn't having very many beds filled, and he didn't get much income from the state. So he found a way to get rid of it.
Boy, it doesn't take too many well-placed or unwell-placed, depending how you want to look at it, consciousness of darkness to run a good thing, because it took a lot of work to get that to the prisons at that point. And
yes,
I commend anybody that was involved in that, whether that's you, Judge Kelly, the people who went over in the 60s and the whole gang. Yay for them. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, I could go on and on about the manuscript, and I will another day. I've got a couple of things I wanted to mention and see what you thought. But I appreciate with that talk that you just gave. it was just very, it was meaty. There wasn't much fluff in there at all.
We try to stay away from the fluff and make it meaningful.
Yeah, well, you did, and I hope
get to the guts of it.
People got that. Yeah, and that, but I'm still, and then I come back, and I guess I have to finish this conversation on that rage thing. And I mean, I have looked at that demon right in the eye quite often when I was little, and I could see how it blanketed out everything else. Nothing else counted but the rage at that moment.
Yep. Yep.
From that person. And wow.
So many lives ruined by that.
Oh my goodness. My goodness.
So many lives destroyed.
Yes. Any parting shots on the Khabouris or anything you said before I sashay out of here?
Well, I'll share one story. I remember I would go and spend time in Albany with Dan at the Judicial Service Agency while we were creating laws of living, putting our two courses together. And I would teach there at the Judicial Service Agency. And I remember one particular day there was a fellow that came in who was a local. And how can I describe him? He probably the best way to describe him is, this is a guy in size and stature and appearance that would be the last person you'd want to meet in a dark alley.
Okay, gotcha.
And Dan, his name was Dan McDougall, and everybody called him Mr. Mac. And I remember this guy, this giant of a guy, and he had spent the majority of his mature years in prison. And he came bouncing in the front door. Dan was in the room. Mr. Mac, I kept Rockma active all week this week. Just as excited as a little kid that he was able to keep his mind connected to love for a whole week.
Oh, wow.
And this guy was, probably 380 pounds, 6'6", don't come near me in a dark alley. And he was just so excited about what he discovered, that he could keep love active in his own mind. And this is a kid that had been through hell as a child, and then, went into the prison system and spent years in the prison system.
Yeah.
Now he's excited about the love in his mind. It's like, hey, it doesn't get better than that.
No, it doesn't. No, Michael, that's about as good as it gets right there, and that's very, very inspiring. I'm touched by that one.
It sure is. Yeah, it's pretty.
I've been around too much of that sort of thing to not be able to appreciate it, and which brings me up to one last point here too, because I live next door to a guy that had he'd done vehicular homicide. Anyways, he'd spent over 5 years in the big house somewhere out west, and for murder, and he lived next door to me, and he was one of these rather large and one of these red-haired guys that ordinarily you could set him off, with anything, but after he'd done 5 years in there, he had learned, and his whole faith. And I use this word because it kept coming up in the manuscript, was perception, the mind's perception. And he says, it's all, every time something would come up and you would think that I would ordinarily think maybe he'd go off sideways. No, he would just say, well, it's perception. It's a matter of the mental perception.
Wow. That's pretty enlightened.
Yeah, I
awesome.
thought so. And boy, did we get along, because, I don't know, we just did. And And that perception, according to the manuscript, and of course, I guess that's true, it's based a lot on the lexicon of the language you're using and how that word is used. And yeah. And so, wow.
You might share with him.
Go ahead.
I was going to say you might share with him a link on the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop. And if he's got that kind of insight coming from a prison background, then he'd probably be really excited to watch that workshop. And
well, I would love to, but I lost track of him a few years ago. And
he's not. No, he doesn't live there anymore.
He's not right here. He's not handy right now. But nonetheless, it was a good thing. And oh God, I hate it when you have this thought you think was a really good one, and then 12 seconds later, it
slips away.
Yeah, that's like the song "Dust in the Wind," you know. Perception. Anyways, yeah, and so that was quite a it was a good eye opener for me, for someone who did not have a necessarily a spiritual program or a psychological whatever, you know, some kind of healing program to come up with that. And so I've always appreciated that, considering source. And I thank you for your participation in all this Khabouris and Aramaic stuff. It's really quite fine.
I'll tell you, I feel so blessed by having fallen into it, and it was literally that I kind of fell into it. I feel very, very blessed that the universe directed me to tap into that Aramaic work.
Well, sometimes that's the best. That's how it seems to happen. You know, is you kind of fall into something, and so and the reason why, I think one reason why we quote fall into things that we find maybe something we've never done before, but all of a sudden we find we're just really good or feel good about something, is that we're already resonant inside with whatever it is.
Right.
And so you were already resonant, so bingo. And so you were just the right guy at the right time. So anyways, we're
definitely moved me.
And I thank you, my brother, and I'll just catch you down the happy trail if that's good.
All right. Blessings. Appreciate you.
Okay. Ta-ta.
Okay. Take care, Dusty. So we're down to about 5 minutes. Miss Jeanie, any thoughts for you, dear heart?
Actually 3 minutes. Oh, no.
3 minutes.
I put a lot of links in the notes for today, so it will direct you of how to, the options that you have of getting the Enlightenment. I've already had somebody say that they made the donation, and so we'll get that out to you tomorrow. And
cool.
If you have any questions, give us a call or drop an email to Jeanie@whyagain.org.
And if you're ready to take your work to the next level and you'd like to support us, there is a paid workshop that we do once a month called the Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing Club. And once a month we gather on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock and Sunday morning at 11 o'clock via Zoom. And we step into doing Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing. So that's a club that's been going on for better than a year now. And we've got people who just recently signed up for their second year, moving into it. It's small, but it's a really sweet community, and the group works together with just creating support and understanding how to use a mind shifter to stir things up, and then use the still point breathing process to resolve. And so we do a still point breathing session on Saturday morning. And then on Sunday, we get together again at 11 o'clock via Zoom. And, okay, what's happened? How are things unfolding? What do you need support with? And really sweet community of folks. So it is a paid workshop.
This
it's one
Saturday.
Of This Saturday and Sunday, yes. And so if you're interested in joining us for that, it is a paid process, and a single one session in that club, and you get video on how to use the mind shifters, and then the still point breathing session, processing session. And the cost for a single session is $150. You can register for a single session, or you can register for 3 sessions, and the cost drops to $125. Or you can register for a year, and the cost for a year is $900, so it's dropped significantly. And if you try it out for 1 month and you go, yeah, I'm ready to do this on sign up for the year, then we prorate. If you paid the $150 rate, we prorate that so it drops down, and you get the year for $900. So if you want to join us for that, that would be awesome. And if you're interested in doing that, drop Jeanie a note. She'll get an email out to you with a link to the workshop on mind shifters, how to use the mind shifter tool. And then Saturday morning we'll gather and we'll go right from square one to the mind shifters and still point breathing process. So in the meantime, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you. And have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings. Bye-bye.